Welcome into CBS News 24/7. I'm Juliette Goodrich. Here is a look at four big headlines we're following at 4. Wall Street worries why the stock market is tanking thanks to some sour sentiment in retail. President Trump meets with the president of South Africa. The tense exchange in the Oval Office as the two leaders clash over whether white genocide is taking place in South Africa.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can
and
take
then when
land.
they take the land, they kill the white farmer.
Security concerns on the United Airlines flight. The message written on a bathroom mirror that forced the plane to turn around. And the Super Bowl champs say push on. The NFL decides the fate of the tush push. To the White House and that tense Oval Office meeting between President Donald Trump and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. So the meeting comes just days after the U.S. granted 59 white Afrikaners refugee status, and as President Trump insists white farmers in South Africa have been targets of genocide. Trump called what's happening there the, quote, opposite of apartheid, and he pulled up a video actually to back up that claim, putting President Ramaphosa on the defense. Take a look. Then President Trump pulled out a stack of articles and started flipping through the headlines.
Look, these are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. Horrible death. Death.
So as President Trump drilled down on those allegations of violence, President Ramaphosa said the majority of people killed are actually black. Let's get to CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi joining us live now. So a lot to digest from the fiery back and forth in the Oval Office meeting. Trump claims what he's claiming that's happening in South Africa. So what stands out to you about the tense back and forth?
Well, Jules, it's good to be with you. It's just another Oval Office meeting with a foreign leader that turned into a fiery exchange between the president and said leader. Of course, I'm referencing that meeting with Zelensky back in February, but this was of a different circumstance. This was with the South African leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, and he was there meeting with the president today, one of the first leaders from Africa to come to the U.S. and meet with the president. And all of this really centered on this claim from the Trump administration that there is a genocide ongoing in their country for white Afrikaner farmers. This is also the same group that Trump gave asylum to last week in a very hastily expedited process, normally one that takes months, but normally one that takes years, but happened within months. So Jules, we have just a few minutes, but it's a very delicate situation, so I do want to lay this out specifically of what we know and what happened in that meeting. We know that Trump showed Ramaphosa this video where we saw political leaders in South Africa talking in their parliament and at a rally that was talking about violence against white African farmers. We should note that that particular political leader was expelled from their parliament. And he's also someone who Ramaphosa condemned the words of and said that we don't agree with that. We agree with the words of Nelson Mandela, which is sitting down with people and having a conversation. Trump went on to say, though, that even though you condemn those words, you're still able to take the land of white South African farmers. Mr. Ramaphosa said that's not quite true. They do have these land laws, where they can obtain this land, but it's more likened to eminent domain here in the U.S., where you can take private land for public use. He said that is what it is for, not for a redistribution of land from white Afrikaner farmers to black farmers. And on that note of violence against them, he says that, yes, they do have a problem of violence in their country, but more often than not, it is black South Africans who are suffering from this violence rather than white South Africans when you compare the numbers. So the president there today having this very fiery exchange. I should note at the end he was asked if there's anything that Mr. Ramaphosa could do to improve relations. And Trump said he does want to see some action on this perceived genocide from the U.S. So certainly a situation to keep following up, especially as we expect more of those refugee flights to come from South Africa to the United States.
Also, Olivia, the Pentagon says it officially accepted the luxury jet plane from Qatar, an aircraft that Trump wants to use as Air Force One. So what are we hearing now?
Well, we do know that the Pentagon says that they are in possession of this jet. We know previously it was in San Antonio, so we're tracking where exactly it is now. But to what happens next, it's a great question, because Air Force One is not just a regular plane. This is a plane that has protections against electromagnetic pulses. It has a command center, one that was used on 9/11. It has a medical center that can be turned into a surgery ward or a surgery unit if needed. This is the plane of all planes, and it's meant to be kind of a secure bunker in the sky for the president. So the question now is, how are they going to retrofit this Qatari plane to make sure it's safe and it has the same capabilities that the current Air Force One plane does have, and also to make sure and check that even though they were gifted this by the Qatari royal family, that there is bugs or anything in the plane, anything that could perhaps jeopardize the safety of the presidency or any secure information that is then shared on that plane. So a lot of questions now about exactly how long this is going to take to make sure that this plane is safe, when it will be used, when it will get up in the air. And of course, the president's still waiting on those Boeing contracts as well for the Air Force One or the new Air Force One planes rather, that won't be ready for another couple of years. So a lot of questions surrounding that as well.
Yeah, good information. Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia, thank you. All right, let's get to Wall Street. A sell-off on Wall Street. The closing bell rang just moments ago. The Dow tumbled more than 800 points. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map. This is brought to you by FinViz. It shows the top 500 stocks, and as you can see, it's virtually all in the red today. So let's bring in Paul LaMonica, a senior writer for Barron's. So, Paul, first things first, what's going on? Why is the market down so much and all of a sudden?
Yeah, it really has to do with what's going on with bond yields, the 10-year Treasury yield spiking today. And I think that is leading to concerns that it's going to be more costly for businesses and consumers to take out new loans. There are worries about rising interest rates, and the Federal Reserve is hopefully going to cut short-term rates at some point lower this year, but it's not clear when exactly that's going to happen, if it's going to be something that they would do in June, July, maybe not until September. So a lot of uncertainty right now. And then you have some of those big retailers like Target and Lowe's and TJX reporting earnings and giving some cautious outlooks about the consumer as well. That has people worried also.
Yeah, we do hear the word uncertainty a lot. How is Trump's big, beautiful bill and its impact on the deficit playing a role in all of this?
It definitely is, because, clearly the hope was that because the Republicans have control of the House, they would be able to get any of Trump's preferred legislation through. But it's not that easy. The Republicans have a very small margin, and there are still some members of the party that are traditional conservative, fiscally conservative, deficit-focused Republicans who don't like the magnitude of potential tax cuts or tax breaks coupled with more spending. That is going to be a tough sell for some of these Republicans to pass this bill, because they want to see more fiscal responsibility at a time where there are concerns still lingering about whether or not the U.S. could be going into, if not recession, maybe an economic slowdown.
All right, Paul LaMonica, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank
House
you.
Speaker Mike Johnson and the House Freedom Caucus will discuss the big, beautiful spending bill with President Trump today. Trump wants to see the bill passed soon, as it contains many of his spending priorities to fund campaign promises. So CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joining us live from Capitol Hill now. Hi, Nicole. What are we expecting to come out of this meeting today?
Well, look, this is about House Republican leadership trying to update the president on the state of play here. We did catch up with Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who said that they are meeting with the president on the state of the bill. Look, they were both asked whether or not the House would move forward with a vote as soon as tonight. However, both leaders were non-committal, but the speaker did reiterate that he does want to hold to the schedule of trying to get this bill passed before Memorial Day, since that is kind of what the president is hoping for and would like to see. We know the president also meeting with members of the House Freedom Caucus. They announced this morning that they had accepted a proposal from the White House. Unclear what the details of that proposal might be, but House Freedom Caucus members, who are some of the more conservative members of the House Republican Conference, acknowledged that this dealt with some of their concerns around Medicaid and rolling back some clean energy subsidies. So again, the hope is, on the part of the speaker at least, that he can still hold this vote before the week's
And as they work to pass the bill, we have some new analysis out from the Congressional Budget Office. So what does it say about the big, beautiful bill?
Well, what it finds is that it would contribute about $3.8 trillion to the national deficit. It also would cut Medicaid about $700 billion, SNAP or food assistance, food stamps, if you will, by about $267 billion. That's of grave concern to many Democrats who pulled some of those figures as yet another example of why they are vehemently opposed to this bill, because they think those cuts will be simply too damaging. The fact that it could contribute to the deficit too kind of goes against Republicans' claims that this would be deficit neutral, if you will. But that being said, we do expect some additional analysis from the Congressional Budget Office throughout the week. Unclear if we'll see a final score on this bill before the House votes on it, but that is something certainly many members here on Capitol Hill are interested in before they commit to moving forward with this package.
All right, Nicole Kelly and Nicole, thank you. Fierce criticism in one city after tornado sirens failed to alert people of a severe weather threat. The investigation into what went wrong and the top official now on leave. Next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Breaking news in California. High-speed chase in Los Angeles. Police are tracking a motorcycle blazing through intersections and swerving through streets in the Glendale area. Our partners at our CBS News Los Angeles station have the latest. Let's look.
There is that motorcycle. Again, this started in the Glendale area around 12:25. What we've learned is that this motorcyclist had some type of traffic violation, according to Glendale PD, and then refused to stop. They are following this motorcycle. Oftentimes they will do that instead of going behind this motorcycle full lights and sirens, because that often causes the driver to speed up. This way, oftentimes they do slow down. And we did notice when he was on the 210 that this motorcyclist did slow down a bit and was obeying the laws, it appeared. But now speed's definitely picking up on these surface streets, blowing through intersections. Really dangerous out there, Mark.
Yeah, so getting some information now from Glendale PD. They say this pursuit initiated because of a traffic violation in Glendale. But California Highway Patrol has information that they're calling this motorcycle a code 10851, which is a stolen vehicle. So we may have a traffic violation, but upon further investigation, perhaps getting the license plate from Glendale PD, the officer may not have realized it at the time of the traffic violation, but this motorcycle may be stolen. So that's 2 violations here.
All right, you are watching coverage of a high-speed chase in Los Angeles. We'll continue to follow it and bring you any more details on CBS News 24/7. Moving on, though, sources tell CBS News that the Justice Department is investigating former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo over his testimony to Congress about his state's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this comes as Cuomo is running for mayor of New York. He is calling the investigation election interference. CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen joining us live now to break this all down. What do we know about the investigation, Jake?
Well, that's right. We don't know too much so far. Obviously, the Department of Justice does not comment on the record about ongoing investigations. But what we do know is that former Governor Cuomo oversaw one of the most important COVID responses back in 2020 and 2021. We know that obviously he was doing those daily briefings, but we also know that there was an ongoing scandal with nursing home deaths that went on, which actually resulted in a Department of Justice investigation during President Trump's first term, in which it's alleged that Cuomo himself and the people around him modified death reports at nursing homes in the state. And when he was brought in front of a congressional committee to discuss this, it is alleged by House Republicans that Mr. Cuomo lied about that, potentially perjured himself under oath. This has really been an ongoing thing for the last couple of years by people like James Comer, head of the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives, a longtime Trump ally and Republican who has wanted to kind of point out inconsistencies in how Democrats and Republicans have been prosecuted over things like perjury. We know that the Biden administration refused to really engage with him, obviously, on any kind of criminal referral, but Comer has been taking this up. We know that the Department of Justice is looking into this. However, obviously, no charges have been filed yet.
All right, Jake, thank you so much. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is getting a lot of attention for her definition of habeas corpus shared during a Senate committee hearing. Noem testified before the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs about her agency's budget for the 2026 fiscal year. Now, during the hearing, she was asked to define habeas corpus, leading to a heated exchange.
Secretary Noem, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff recently said that the Trump administration is actively looking at suspending habeas corpus. Last week you were asked about this, and I want to clarify your position because it's obviously really important to get this right. So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am.
Suspend their
habeas
right
corpus. Excuse me. That's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the Live Free or Die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So, Secretary Noem, do you support the core protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone?
Yeah, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let us be clear, though,
it has never been done. It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress.
Habeas corpus is guaranteed under the first article of the Constitution, which explains the powers of Congress. Section 9 says, in part, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. That basically means people cannot be detained without valid legal grounds and allows them to petition a court to review the legality of their detention. On to outrage in a Texas community after a TikTok challenge goes horribly wrong. How several middle school students ended up with burned hands. Next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. To Missouri, where the head of the City Emergency Management Agency for St. Louis has been placed on leave. And this comes after tornado sirens failed to sound before an EF3 tornado hit parts of the area Friday. 5 people were killed in this storm. City officials say there was a breakdown in communication that led to the sirens not sounding. So let's get to our breaking news correspondent Chanel Call in the CBS newsroom in New York with more on the reason the mayor gave for this breakdown in communication.
Yeah, Jules, we're talking about such a huge disaster here. Local officials today calling this a once-in-a-generation tornado. You mentioned 5 people died when the storm moved through on Friday. And one of the big questions now people there are asking is why warning sirens did not sound before that EF3 tornado hit St. Louis on Friday. In response to that failure, the mayor, Kara Spencer, who, by the way, has only been in office for 1 month, just announced last night, Jules, that she is now putting the head of the city's emergency management agency, or CEMA, Sarah Russell, on leave. Here's how the mayor explained exactly what went wrong.
Friday afternoon, CEMA staff were at a workshop at 1520 Marketplace. They were not in CEMA headquarters, despite where the actual button is located, despite the weather issues that we knew were coming. This meant that our CEMA staff could not activate the button. When the when the warning was issued by the National Weather Service, the fire department was contacted by CEMA. At that point, there was a breakdown in communication. The directive to activate the sirens was not clear. This cannot happen when a tornado is ripping through our community. Our safety depends on clear and direct communication.
And Jules, just for some perspective here, there are about 60 outdoor sirens that are stationed around St. Louis, and they're meant to be activated once the National Weather Service issues a tornado warning, just as it did on Friday. There are 2 places where this can happen, where they can be activated. One is the CEMA office, where those officials reportedly were not in place. They were at a workshop. The second place is the fire department. As you heard, their crews were not inside the CEMA office when they would have needed to activate the alarm on Friday. And then today, the mayor said that the siren button at the fire department was actually not working as it should have. So really a few big systemic issues that led to this failure.
Oh boy. So where does the investigation go from here?
Right, so Russell will now be placed on paid administrative leave pending a full external investigation into exactly how and when CEMA responded on Friday, particularly why that outdoor warning siren system had failed at such a critical moment. Officials also, Jules, said today that they tested and they can now confirm that the button at the CEMA office was in fact functioning. The mayor also issuing an executive order essentially stationing fire department personnel there 24/7 to activate the sirens if needed in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Chanel Call. Chanel, thank you. Meanwhile, another day of wild weather in the South. Take a look at this video out of Jackson, Tennessee. It shows powerful winds tearing through the roof of a nearby factory that sent debris just flying during a tornado. Nearly a dozen twisters were reported across 6 states. And then golf ball-sized hail slamming parts of Alabama yesterday. The storm also bringing heavy rain to this region. So let's get right to meteorologist Zoe Mintz to talk about what's happening and how long it's going to keep going. They
Luckily,
need a
break is on the way.
Right.
Finally, they've seen over a week of severe weather every single day of the past 7. Finally, though, going to be looking at much quieter conditions. And you can see below me, even now, we're already starting to see those drier conditions make their way in. These drier conditions will stick around through the rest of the week ahead of us, although Memorial Day weekend, do be aware you might want to keep your eyes on the radar once again. Today, we are going to see a couple of lines of potential severe weather. You can see one that's heading out right below my feet, potentially in eastern North Carolina, potentially up near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We are going to continue to see, again, not nearly as high of a threat of severe weather, but it's still there, still at that level 2 out of 5 risk, and then that level 1 out of 5 kind of just spread out elsewhere. And the best news of all is the tornado risk with this. It is extremely low. It is just in that one little area up near Pittsburgh. So there is that potential, but it's only about a 2% versus the 15% and that chance for large, or large EF2 or higher tornadoes. So let's break down the timing of today's severe weather threat. And again, kind of just show you how much lower it is today compared to yesterday. This is our chance for large hail, eastern North Carolina and up near West Virginia, near Pittsburgh and eastern parts of Ohio. Then we also have the potential even higher for large hail and 2-inch in diameter near southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. Kind of just depends on where you're located, but that is going to be that best potential for large hail. There's also the potential for flash flooding. That's a level 2 out of 4 risk on our excessive rainfall outlook. And again, look where it's centered. Pittsburgh, you are right in the bullseye. So do expect anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of additional rainfall as we step out tonight and into early tomorrow morning, as the center of the storm circulation is now making its way up across the Great Lakes through this evening. Again, it's going to bring some widespread activity across the Northeast through the overnight hours and into early tomorrow morning, but it's really just heavy rainfall. It's not any severe weather threats that we have to be concerned about, which is great news. Although if you have any plans tomorrow and you live across the Northeast, again, an umbrella is going to be necessary. Waking up early tomorrow morning in New York City and then Boston, Massachusetts, you'll be dealing with some heavy rainfall. Look at that line of heavy rain that will be heading towards you. This is Thursday, 3 p.m. Get ready for a rainy afternoon tomorrow. But again, at least you're not going to be dealing with those damaging winds or hail, just anywhere from 1 to 2+ inches of rain. The bigger issue we're going to be keeping our eyes on is the heat that's going to be building across Southern California. Today will be in the upper 80s to low 90s. Tomorrow, even warmer than that. And potentially a few areas going to be reaching the triple digits. And with the heat, the dry air, and the windy conditions, we are now going to be concerned about fire danger in Southern California again. So it's something that we are going to keep a very close eye on through tomorrow, Jules. There is that fire danger and there is that heat, but at least the places across the central United States taking a big, deep breath and can pick up the pieces from the severe weather.
All right. Thank you, Zoe. All right, let's go to New York now, where rapper Kid Cudi is expected to take the stand in Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial. Kid Cudi is set to testify tomorrow about his brief relationship with Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, back in 2011. Prosecutors say Combs was so upset about that relationship, he had Cudi's convertible blown up by a firebomb. So today in court, Combs' former assistant George Kaplan took the stand. The jury also heard from a special agent and a psychologist. CBS News national correspondent Jerika Duncan joining us live now. Hi, Jerika. Tell us about what happened in court today. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, exactly. And every day it seems like there's a lot to unpack. It was a Homeland Security Special Agent, Gerard Gannon, who testified today and was able to show the jurors pictures and actual evidence that they found from the home of Sean Combs in Miami. So they showed pictures of red heels. Apparently he had 18 pairs of platform shoes. They showed some of the images in his master bedroom closet of sex toys. Then they showed that there were Balenciaga boots that he had with 3 cell phones stuffed in one of those boots, as well as several drugs. They showed pictures of pills, blue, pink, white, yellow, orange, black. And then they told the jurors that they were able to test the substances, and they tested positive for MDMA, ketamine, cocaine, methamphetamine. So again, we heard more about the drugs, but then we were able to actually see the evidence that the jurors were able to take in. We also heard from an expert, a forensic psychologist and clinical psychologist expert, Dr. Dawn Hughes. She was used to sort of set the scene of what to expect from a domestic violence victim or someone who's experienced sexual assault. So she spoke directly to the jurors, really, almost as if she was speaking to them as if they were the only ones in the room, explaining some of the characteristics of a victim of sexual assault or domestic violence, how many of them will suppress memories, and how things may become more clear for people later on, years after they've had that experience. And this really speaks to Cassie Ventura's testimony last week when she talked about why she decided to come forward in November of 2023 with that civil lawsuit, which really sort of jump-started this criminal investigation. So a lot was covered today. Again, the former assistant to Sean Combs was testifying. He'll come back and testify tomorrow. He was his assistant from 2013 to 2015, but a lot of people wanting to hear from Scott Muscady, a.k.a. Kid Cudi, as you mentioned at the beginning of this report.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerika Duncan. Jerika, thank you. Another inmate captured in New Orleans, where authorities tracked him down, and the latest on the search for the 5 fugitives who remain at large. Next, you're watching CBS News 24/7. captured another one of the 10 inmates who escaped from a New Orleans jail last night. Corey Boyd is charged with second-degree murder. This afternoon, Louisiana State Police announced the arrest of 2 people who helped some of the inmates after their escape. CBS News reporter Katie Weiss is live in New Orleans for us. So how is the search going for the rest of the inmates still at large?
Well, as far as we know, still 5 men at large. Could be anywhere, could be right here. It's funny to say, in a way, you know, they've had a 5-6 day head start, and yet, as you mentioned, that one person who was arrested last night, he was actually found right here in New Orleans. Didn't make it very far despite having several days on the run. We also know that some of these inmates who are still at large at this hour are considered armed and dangerous. They are accused of violent crimes, including one convicted of murder. So officials are treating this very seriously. There's a lot of tension in the city, too, just over accountability about how this could have happened in the first place. The sheriff says she's taking full responsibility for it, but is demanding a lot more help from the city. She says she needs $13 million to make this facility here behind me adequately secure for the remaining inmates that are still here.
Yeah, that leads to my next pretty obvious question. What are any updates in the investigation into how all those inmates were able to escape?
That's a big question, right? There's been a lot of talk about how it could have been an inside job, or how did they have outside help as well. Now we know a little bit of both of that. We know that a maintenance worker here at the facility has been charged with 11 counts, felony counts, and a $1.1 million bond for his alleged involvement. He says he was coerced, threatened to help the inmates escape from the inside. But the AG here today tells us she doesn't buy that story. She says he had plenty of time to report the escape and did not do so. Meanwhile, just this afternoon, 2 other alleged co-conspirators were arrested in this case. They were arrested just an hour south of here in a parish called Plaquemines Parish. It's a smaller community just south of here. And those 2 co-conspirators are accused of allegedly driving these escapees around town after they broke out of this jail and helping them pick up things that they needed. So it gives us some clues as to how these inmates were able to then not only make a break for it, but then get around more undetected. And authorities want to warn anyone, if you are harboring a fugitive, you will be held accountable. So do the right thing and call police right away.
Yeah, remarkable in its own right how this all unfolded and how it's now coming to a conclusion with some of the arrests and some of the people that are coming forward. But there's still more out there. Katie Weiss, Katie, thank you. A United Airlines flight from Hawaii to California had to turn around midair after an apparent bomb threat. The airline said the security concern was found written on a bathroom mirror. Passengers called the experience intense.
And had to wait in the plane for around 4 hours to deplane because we had to go out one at a time, and then bomb dogs had to check out every single bag that came out and every single person. And later I found out that through the airport manager that somebody had written on the wall, on the bathroom mirror, that there's a bomb on the plane. Yeah, FBI were on the scene, over a dozen police cars. It was pretty intense.
So no word yet on what those officials might have found on their investigation. That diversion happened overnight, and as of this morning, no arrests have been made. Also, we're learning more details about the bombing at that Southern California fertility clinic over the weekend, which left the perpetrator dead and injured 4 others. A CBS News exclusive, Andres Gutierrez got the chance to do a walkthrough of the blast zone with Palm Springs Police Chief Andy Mills, who was among the first to respond.
This is probably the outer frame, the inner frame of the car. I mean, but you can see the blast wound up making pieces of metal this small, not only here, but all over the neighborhood. And to rip off the face of the building like this, and to collapse this building, that was not a trunk load of fireworks. That was a substantial device.
Detectives believe the suspect acted alone, but looking at whether anyone helped him design the bomb. On to Texas now, burning anger over a TikTok challenge gone wrong. Parents in Woodville say their children were forced to crawl on hot pavement and then came home with 2nd and 3rd degree burns. So parents say the middle schoolers were given a choice between running track and doing a TikTok challenge. But the kids didn't know they would crawl 100 meters over 150-degree pavement and have to restart their trek if they fell.
That is ridiculous. That makes me so mad. I mean, why? Why would you do that to these kids? They're supposed to be keeping our kids safe and everything. That is just straight torture that they did to them kids.
Okay, so the coach is no longer with the school district, according to the superintendent. The police chief is investigating and could take the case to the district attorney. Every year, nearly 5 million people in the U.S. seek medical care for a traumatic brain injury. And now, based on a mountain of data and years of research, a team of international experts has identified a more precise way to diagnose and treat the trauma. CBS News Bay Area's Ann Makovic on the new criteria that may soon be available at a trauma center near you.
Sean Sanford of San Francisco writes fiction and music reviews. He's a substitute teacher and right now is getting his master's in creative writing. He also really loves skateboarding. 8 years ago, Sean was about to show his friends a new trick.
And then my next memory is laying down, looking at my friends. My wife Candace was standing there and they were asking me if I recognized any of my friends.
Sean had slipped and hit his head on a concrete ledge.
I kept repeating myself and being like, what are we doing? Where are we?
At San Francisco General, the clinical guidelines used for decades indicated Sean had a bad concussion that could resolve with rest and time. But then the ER staff scanned his brain and what they saw, he says, saved his life.
Sent me into the surgery room. They called Dr. Manley, who wasn't working that day. They called him in and they said that they were like, we have a patient who cracked his skull. And it's bad, and if he doesn't get treatment, like right now, he's gonna die.
Chief of Neurosurgery at the General and UCSF neurologist Dr. Jeff Manley. He says the current criteria used to assess brain injuries, the clinical symptoms alone, no longer applies.
First of all, it's not very precise.
Manley is part of a coalition of experts and patients from 14 countries who are calling for an overhaul. Trauma centers nationwide will soon begin to test the new approach.
We've been working on this now for over a decade.
The hope? It will lead to more accurate diagnoses, appropriate treatment, and follow-up care.
When somebody's diagnosed as a mild TBI or a concussion, often they're just disregarded. And we know from studies that we've done over the last 10 to 15 years that a number of people that have these so-called mild TBIs, actually, they're not mild at all.
The approach involves clinical exams, biomarker blood tests that measure tissue damage, imaging tests which look for blood clots or bleeding, and modifiers like a patient's age, gender, mental health, even prior head injuries.
We know that it's not just what the injury brings to the patient, but what the patient brings to the injury.
Sean needed follow-up care. After the accident, he developed epilepsy and depression. He now meditates and helps his wife develop relaxation products in their little store.
It's really a place of magic and a place of healing.
And yes, Sean still skateboards, but now always with a helmet. Ann Makovic, CBS News, San Francisco.
A record number of people are expected to travel this Memorial Day weekend, but one major airport is facing new flight restrictions. Next, you're watching CBS News 24/7. All right, let's get to some breaking news out of Los Angeles. A fast-growing brush fire burning through a homeless encampment. Our partners at CBS News Los Angeles have the latest.
No structures certainly threatened right now, except, of course, that homeless encampment that's there. Yeah, it's the Orange Line busway that's going right through there. You can see SkyCal put up that map. But right now, this fire is burning out of control right now. About 2 acres, looks like, as firefighters are trying to get on scene here. They're getting multiple 911 calls now from people on the 405 and the 101 that can see the flames and the smoke coming up through this area. No reports of any injuries, but we do see, Amy, down there, there are some people probably from that camp that are trying in vain to put this fire out on their own.
Yeah, they're going to need a lot more water than that, Mark. Okay. We'll, of course, stay on top of this one and bring you updates as we get them. We're watching as this one person is running towards the fire. Certainly a dangerous situation, as you mentioned, Mark, because there's really not much that one person can do. We see him using some kind of material to swat at those flames, but it doesn't seem to be doing much good, unfortunately, at this point.
Yeah, and it looks like he's got a pair of machetes. Actually, wasn't sure what this guy was going to do with those, but it looks like he's trying to cut down some of the brush. Again, not recommended to do this. These flames can rapidly move out of control. They can move fast with light, flashy fuel like this. It's better left for professionals, especially since there's really no structures in danger at this point. So approaching this fire on your own.
And that was breaking news coverage from our partners at CBS News Los Angeles. Now news we're following around the world. 5 people are dead, including 3 children, after a suicide bomber targeted a school bus. The area has seen a long-running insurgency from separatist groups. Pakistan's military is accusing, quote, Indian proxies of being behind this attack. India has not responded to this accusation. Russian President Vladimir Putin visited the Kursk region for the first time since Moscow claimed to recapture it. He met with local leaders and visited a nuclear power plant. Ukrainian forces made a surprise assault into Kursk last year. Russia says it has pushed Ukrainian forces out of the area, but Ukraine denies the claim. Pope Leo XIV called for an end to the war in Gaza during his first general audience since becoming pope. He says the situation is becoming increasingly worrying and called for sufficient humanitarian aid to be let in. Humanitarian agencies say a total blockade led to severe shortages of food and medicine for Gaza. Under pressure from allies, Israel is allowing aid into Gaza, but military operations continue. If you are planning a trip this summer to visit family or friends, you might think it's going to cost you more because of inflation concerns. The truth is, it might not. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve explains.
In Music City, the sounds of the summer are already rocking along Lower Broadway, where we met the Smith family from Arkansas.
Did you guys plan it now so you could do it while it was nice but before the crowds?
Yes, absolutely.
By heading to Tennessee ahead of Memorial Day, they also got a better deal.
Are you doing anything to try to sort of maximize your buck while you're on vacation?
Well, we got the cost, yes. We got online before we came to get special pricing. She gets in free at Dollywood.
Compared to Memorial Day 2024, the overall cost of travel is down 2%, but Americans still expect to spend nearly $300 more this summer than last. Airfare is off nearly 8%, and rental car costs dropped 2%. But vacationing in 2025 still costs you 12% more than before the pandemic.
A lot of people are still taking those big international trips this year that they booked many, many months ago.
Sally French tracks vacation inflation for NerdWallet.
There are a lot of unanticipated expenses that cost more, and these are the things that can really add up. These are the Lyft and Uber rides. These are the parking expenses. These are the tips.
Newlyweds Latasha and Alan Scott were loving the gas prices on their drive to Tennessee from Fredericksburg, Virginia. About 40 cents a gallon cheaper than last Memorial Day weekend.
Anything surprised you about this trip?
Yeah, some of the hotels were like, I think it was like $3,000 a night. We were like, what the heck? This is an apartment. You got to sign a lease.
But hotels on average are actually a bit cheaper this year. Entertainment, doing things while you're on vacation, that rose 3.4%. And all those meals eaten out will once again cost you more this summer, and 34% more than 2019.
When it comes to food, gas, it all just really adds up. So try to get the best discounts we can.
Starting next week, a travel cost for Southwest flyers will increase. The airline will start charging for checked bags. Some tips to save: you may be able to find cheaper flights if you're flexible when and where you fly. Budget for eating out and use those credit card points to cut your travel costs. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, New York.
All right, here we go. NFL owners voted against a proposed ban on the tush push. This means teams can continue to use the controversial short yardage play. It allows teammates to add quarterbacks when plunging into the line. The Philadelphia Eagles, who had much success with the play, celebrated the decision on social, of course, and they posted this image with the message, "Push on." America Decides with Major Garrett is next here on 24/7. We leave you with a look at the White House, where the University of Florida Gators met with President Trump to celebrate their NCAA college basketball championship win. You are watching CBS News 24/7. America Decides. Up next.